It's time to rank the best and worst UFC performances of 2024. Now, this isn't a Knockouts of the Year award list, and it's not a Wars of the Year awards list. This is not about who had the best fight, all right? It's not about, oh shit, he had the biggest moment. It's about rounds. It's about striking exchanges. It's about grappling exchanges. And it's going to be us judging from the winner's perspective. How good did the winner of the fight look? And also, were they expected to win? Because if they were, and they go out and do exactly what the fans think they're going to do, it's not going to be an S-tier performance. If an underdog that no one expects to win doesn't necessarily dominate, but still wins clearly, that's going to be really good on this rating system. That's going to be ranked highly. Another thing I'm going to say is, a knockout's like a 5-second moment. I'm not saying it's not impressive. Some of them are going to be on here, but like, you know, they're knockouts. We're talking about mostly long fights, decisions, whatnot. Okay? No one says Jorge Masvidal's Ben Askren fight was the best UFC performance ever. No, but it's like the best KO ever, right? Also, if you get a really good knockout in like the 4th round, but you're getting your ass kicked for 3 rounds leading up till that, that's not necessarily the best performance. Like, it was an ugly fight. It was a war. You got it done. It was entertaining. But as far as how well we're going to rate that, it might not be the highest. All right. So you guys kind of get how I'm going to be rating these fights. First things first, we're going to do Whittaker versus Paulo Costa. This one right off the bat is going to show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. Robert Whittaker was expected to go out there and dominate Paulo Costa and school him and hardly get hit. And he had a war with Paulo Costa, and it was entertaining. If this was a Fights of the Year award list or Fights of the Year list, it would be S tier. But it's how good did Robert Whittaker do, given our expectations? Well, Robert Whittaker is the guy that goes out there time and time again and schools and demoralizes and shuts down contenders like Marvin Vettori, like Kelvin Gastelum, right? And we expected him to be able to go out there and do that against a guy that lost to Marvin Vettori. He went out there and had a war. And for him, it was a moral victory because in his fight before that, he got knocked out and he wanted to stand his ground, right? He didn't want to back down. And Robert Whittaker didn't do that. So if this was a pat on the back type of thing, yeah, Robert Whittaker's going S tier. If this was a, man, he put on a war, respect, this is going S tier. But this was a, how amazing was this? Was this a clean one? Was this a clean one? I don't know. I'm going to say for the fans, was it expected? Like, I think a lot of people, did you expect Whittaker to go to war with Costa? Because a lot of people look back at this fight and they say Whittaker dominated Costa. Like, they'll just brush by it like that. But if you actually remember the fight, this went down to the wire. Costa won the first round because it was close and he rocked Whittaker at the end of the first. The 3rd round was close. Whittaker won it by like a couple of strikes. It was a very close fight. You know what I mean? And maybe Costa's improving, but I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm about to say that's B tier. I'm going to say it wasn't a great performance. It was a great fight, okay? But not the best performance. Next up, we have Umar Nurmagomedov, brother. Bro, you got to put this S tier, brother. Everybody know this. I got to say Umar Nurmagomedov is S tier. All right? Now, I'm joking. I think I'm going to put Umar B tier. I'm going to be a harsh critic in this one, guys. I'm going to put Umar B tier. All right? Was it expected for him to go out there and win? I think a lot of people thought he was going to win, although I picked Sandhagen. So I didn't really expect him to win like this. But what was good about this is he outstruck Cory pretty handily, pretty easily, and that's what impressed me. Now, was Cory fighting like Cory? Was Cory fighting like the guy that we saw flying knee Frankie Edgar? Was Cory fighting like the guy that we saw run around the octagon and say, "Give me my belt"? Or was Cory too busy with the beakers and test tubes? He was a little bit busy. So listen, it was a great performance, but what was the other guy doing? And maybe you got to take that into account for the Whittaker fight, right? But it was clean. It was pretty clean, right? It wasn't a war. This guy didn't get scratched. Nobody got hurt, right? It was nice. It was a good performance. The only thing that I can't put Umar in the A tier for is he didn't dominate Cory on the ground. Cory actually showed up with the specifics. All right, the theory works when it comes to the ground game, but he sort of forgot how to strike a little bit. But for Umar to go out there and to outland Cory Sandhagen, someone that is known for being a really good striker, despite the fact that he's caught up in the beakers and test tubes, for him to go out there and outland him just with the basics, like cardio kickboxing level combinations, that was pretty impressive. I'm going to say this is B tier. Again, A tier would be if he out-grappled Sandhagen as well, right? Maybe put a little bit more sting on those punches and hurt him a couple times, but I'm going to say it's B tier performance. It was pretty good. Next up, we have Shavkat Rakhmonov's smudge performance against Ian Garry. Now, listen, I understand that he outstruck Garry in the first couple of rounds. I get that. Garry was really not doing a whole lot. There was really not a lot going on. It was a low output battle. Shavkat landed the only couple of punches, all right? What was Shavkat expected to go out there and do? What would put him in the expected tier? Well, in my opinion, if he just landed some strikes in the clinch. If Shavkat was in the clinch landing knees, landing elbows, hurting Ian Garry every once in a while, then I would say it's probably more along the lines of an expected fight. But what was really expected was Shavkat to go out there and have a war and bully Ian Garry around. And not saying that he was expected to dominate, but he was expected to hurt him, to bring the fight. And I'm sorry, man, when people were thinking about, I think Shavkat's going to be able to do, they weren't saying just hold him up against the fence. All right? A tier would have been if he took Ian Garry down and bullied him and submitted him in the fourth or beat him up in the clinch. B tier would have been if he just landed, strikes in the clinch every now and then. I don't think he did enough to reach our expectations. I think he fell short a little bit. There was a lot of pushing up against the cage. He couldn't get Garry down more than once. And when he got him down, like it was basically the end of the round, that was basically it. He got his back taken, which wasn't the best look. But, Ian Garry's very good. All right. But when the MMA world is showering Ian Garry with praise, oh my God, he's the real deal. That means that, you didn't really go out there and put on the performance that a lot of us expected. All right. Doesn't mean he's not great. Again, this is just judging the performance in and of itself. So I'm going to say it didn't live up. I don't think it lived up to the expectations, even though he won the fight. But he was expected to win the fight, and it still didn't live up. So let's get on to the next one. Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Man, this is going to be interesting because expected, I think, is what we're going to sit here and say. I think this was pretty expected, but I will say this. I actually think it was better than expected. All right, A tier would have been if Jones went out there and finished him in the first round, and he damn near did. It was pretty much a perfect performance. It's just that the guy that showed up in the cage, right, was just so old, so unbelievably out of it. Stipe was slow, man. And this is the thing. I was saying that if Jones doesn't finish Stipe in the first two rounds, things are going to get tricky for him. And that wasn't the case. But that was based on me thinking the Stipe that was going to show up was going to be at least, 25% of the Stipe we knew back in the day. Turned out it wasn't even 5%. All right, Stipe was gone. All right, totally washed, totally the slowest guy you've ever seen in there. But it was still a really good striking showcase from Jones. And, he still did well on the ground. I'll say it's a B-tier performance because it was so expected. I could also put it expected as well. But that's the thing, though. Was it expected for most people for Jones to easily pick him apart and TKO him on the feet? Because Stipe's known as the guy that's like tough as an old leather boot. For someone to tell you, Jones is going to go out there and TKO him on the feet, most people would say, I don't know about that. Stipe is pretty good. His boxing is pretty good, but Jones made him look easy on the feet. So I'll say it's B tier. Expected would be if he just did it on the ground. So let's get on to the next one. Islam Makhachev. I'm going to put this B tier as well. All right. This is an interesting one because although Islam Makhachev fans, and I'm a Makhachev fan, you guys know I'm a Makhachev fan, but I think I'm so much of a fan, I got to be totally honest, all right? What was Makhachev expected to go out there and do, all right? He was expected to go out there, and he was expected to get Poirier out of there in 1 round or 2 faster than Khabib. Faster than Khabib was what we were saying. And yes, he outstruck Poirier in moments. And it's like, oh, wow, we didn't expect him to go out there and not only out-grapple him, submit him, but out-strike him and outbox him. Yes, that's impressive. I totally understand that. I totally get it. But you cannot sit here and tell me that Islam Makhachev getting pieced up in the 4th round was necessarily a great look. It wasn't a great look. All right? Things started getting a little bit hairy. I was worrying in the 4th round, seeing Dustin Poirier out there piecing him up, landing body shots, cutting him up. Now, if this was a Guerrero list, if this was a, fighting spirit list, of course, man, this BS tier, bro, he dug deep and he got it done in the next round, showed hustle, still pulled off the submission, still got the finish. Yes, but that's not what it's about. It's about, was it a clean performance and was it reaching our expectations? I say, as far as finishing Poirier, I think that was expected, right? But doing it in the 5th, we thought it would come a little bit easier with less of a fight. Now, again, there were some nuances. He was outstriking Poirier in moments, outboxing him in moments. All right, that was very impressive as well. So you got to say that was good. A tier would have been if that 4th round never happened and he won the 4th anyway. S tier would have been if he just totally annihilated him from start to finish and finished him in the 3rd round, outstruck him, did all that, but did it in 3, no cut, nothing. But I'm going to say B tier because that 4th round was getting crazy. Poirier was out there doing his thing. He was out there stuffing takedowns. But it was still a really good performance. Again, people aren't going to like that, but listen, man, you'll see what's in the S tier. S tier performances have to be absolutely perfect. All right? Just like my brother Merab. I'm going to put Merab in the S tier for beating O'Malley. All right? Because it wasn't expected. And now I'm joking. What am I going to do with this? This is the thing. I thought that O'Malley was going to knock Merab out. A lot of people thought O'Malley was going to knock him out, in part due to O'Malley's aura of invincibility at bantamweight going into this fight. We all knew that Merab, if it got past the 3rd round, would take over and dominate. But this is the interesting thing. Even though Merab was a slight underdog, he did not take over and dominate after the 3rd round. Actually, he was up 2 rounds to none on O'Malley. He lost the 3rd and also lost the 5th. That's right, the machine, the best cardio in MMA, the guy that basically had Petr Yan quit in the 2nd round of a fight. This guy lost the 5th round to a striker battle droid O'Malley? If you were to tell me Merab's not going to get finished, he's going to be up 2 rounds to none, but it's going to go to the judges' scorecards, I'm going to be like, oh, the scorecards are going to be 50-40. Merab's going to be, literally suplexing O'Malley 5 times in the 5th round. That wasn't the case. All right, so I'm going to say, I can't say this was totally expected, I'm going to say it was a bit of a pleasant surprise. No, but seriously, this is a tough one to judge because, again, Merab didn't get KO'd, but we all kind of knew that. If you told us that Merab is not going to get KO'd, you would expect him to totally wash O'Malley out, but I think that same dominance that he showed against Yan or Henry Cejudo, we didn't necessarily see that. I get it. It was a title fight. But I thought this was a little bit of a okay performance for Merab. He still dropped the 5th round to O'Malley, dropped the 3rd. So I'll say it was a B-tier performance. I've seen better from Merab, and we'll definitely talk about some of his other ones as we, move further in this video. But let's get on to another one. Reinier De Ridder. I think this was a terrible performance, guys. I'm sorry, but listen, Reinier De Ridder, he is the next Dricus du Plessis. He's kind of got that fumbling, bumbling style, right? The sloppy boppy style. He's a grappler for the most part. And I understand you're not supposed to just go out there and totally roll over GM3 because GM3 is supposed to be a great grappler. I understand that. He's a great grappler. He's on the all-time list for submissions. But Reinier De Ridder is getting outboxed by GM3. And Reinier De Ridder is not only getting outboxed, but he's getting out-grappled by an old man GM3. This is a champion in ONE FC in his prime. Khamzat Chimaev's running through GM3. Bo Nickel's knocking out GM3. Now, I don't know about that, actually. But it's just, I don't know if this was the worst. Because maybe this is Reinier. I've not watched too much Reinier De Ridder. I know he's a great grappler. But, you expect the champion from another promotion to come into the UFC and just totally wash out of GM3. Have a clinic. I'm not gonna say it's the worst, but I'm gonna say it definitely did not live up. It kind of exposed the level of ONE FC being far below the UFC, especially in the heavier weight classes. I know the lighter weight classes are very good, but I'll say, yeah, I'm not gonna say it's the worst, okay? Because maybe he's always gonna have that sloppy man style. But let's get on to the next one. We're gonna have a lot of B tier ones, guys. But I'm gonna sit here and say Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa. I'm sorry, dude. I thought this was a horrible performance. I just have to be honest. Like, listen, people sat there and told me that Sean Strickland dominated Costa. Dude, look at the total strikes, man. Like, the total strikes were 150 to 42. And it's like, first off, Costa won a round or two in this fight. And also, total strikes. Sean Strickland is a guy that's known for having an ability to put up some significant strikes, but he literally just teeped Paulo Costa. 90% of his strikes were teeps with nothing on them. Flimsy teeps. And his fans were saying, yeah, but those teeps would fold anyone. It's like, no, actually they wouldn't. All right. And Paulo Costa was doing his thing and holding his ground in moments. And what did we expect? This is a big thing. Strickland went out there and shut down Adesanya. And then he went out there and a lot of people thought he beat Dricus Du Plessis. So you're going from arguably beating Dricus Du Plessis, shutting out Adesanya, and finishing Abus, to having a teep snooze fest against Paulo Costa. You know what I mean? Like, we were thinking this was going to be a war. Costa's going to hold his ground. Strickland's just going to get angry because he doesn't like the kind of guy Costa is. Costa's the type of guy to just piss him off. Costa, you know, you would expect Strickland to have an extra chip on his shoulder because Costa is supposed to be the tough guy. And you know what Strickland wants to do to a tough guy, right? And he goes out there and just teeps him. And that's it. It was a very, very boring performance. You know, and this is the thing. Whenever Sean Strickland would let his hands go, he would light Paulo Costa up with 5-piece combinations. However, he only did that 3 times in the course of 25 minutes. That's the difference between him being in this tier and him being in this tier. Because whenever he actually let his hands go, he landed and Costa could do nothing. There were moments where it looked like Costa was on the ropes. He can't do shit. But he only did that twice. No risk-taking, no showmanship, no putting a stamp on it, no chip on the shoulder during the fight. Hey, you know, Sean Strickland's had some fights that have not been that great, but the Dricus fight was great. The Adesanya fight, slow at moments, but still very impressive because he shocked us and he shut a striker like Adesanya down. Abu's fight knocked him out. Cannonier fight, chess match, really good. This one, I think this is Sean Strickland's worst ever performance, okay? But let's get on to the next one, Dricus Du Plessis. We're going to talk about Du Plessis' performance against Strickland. On one hand, it was impressive that he was actually able to hit Strickland consistently because, you know, we saw Adesanya have a hard time doing that. Dricus did a pretty good job, and he also took down Strickland. But if you're the winner, and a lot of people thought you lost, that's not the best look. And also, we expected him to go out there and knock Sean Strickland out. Maybe he'll be able to do it in the rematch, but it was an amazing fight, but I'm going to say it didn't necessarily live up. I thought Dricus would maybe, I don't know, beat him up on the ground a little bit. But yeah, I mean, this is a tough one to judge, right? Because it was really a great fight. It was close, but sometimes really close fights can't necessarily be seen as like amazing performances. Similar to Shavkat. Like the best performances, as you guys can see up here, they weren't that close, except for Merab and O'Malley. But the thing that allows Merab to be B tier is that he was sort of the underdog. But, you know, the best performances are going to have to be masterclasses. Unless it's Dricus Du Plessis. I honestly think Dricus' performance against Adesanya is A tier, and I'll tell you why. Okay, a lot of people are going to say, oh my goodness, this was an ugly performance. Adesanya was doing well. That's actually part of it. The Adesanya that showed up in this fight looked incredible. This was one of the best versions of Adesanya I've seen. You know, Dricus had a really good first round. He came out there, landed big shots, landed a couple question mark kicks. Second, third round, Adesanya was out here landing combinations, throwing body shots, like 3-piece combinations going to the body. Usually Adesanya is the one strike at a time guy. He looked really good in this fight. Fast, you know, super tough, good cardio. But again, for Dricus to go out there and not only beat that version of Adesanya, who looked really good, who looked amazing, much better than versions of him that we've seen in the past. For example, when he fought like a Cannonier, right? When he fought Marvin Vettori. So this was a really good version of Adesanya. Dricus is always going to have a sloppy style. He's always going to make it ugly, but that's kind of what he does, right? For him to go out there and be competitive on the feet with Adesanya, I thought he was going to be able to go out there and be competitive on the feet. Not a lot of people thought it'd be like that for him, though. A lot of people thought that Adesanya would school him on the feet. Dricus got to take this to the ground. And he did eventually, submitted him, which is pretty amazing. No one's ever submitted Adesanya. So that's also impressive to take a guy down who has decent takedown defense, never been finished on the ground, only been finished one other time in his UFC career, and to submit him, that was pretty good. I'll say it's A tier, right? Was he expected to beat Adesanya? I think it was kind of 50-50. I don't know. Maybe it's a B tier performance, though. Because A tier would have been if he dropped Adesanya multiple times and beat him up on the ground, second, third round, and dominated him, right? But that's just not Dricus, though, man. And the version of Adesanya that showed up was pretty good. So maybe B tier. Maybe B tier. Nah, I'm going to say that's A tier. Submitting Adesanya is pretty impressive. I'll give you an example of S tier, though. I'm going to say Khamzat Chimaev and Robert Whittaker's S tier. Now, I know we're not going to have a lot of early finishes on this list, but the reason why this is S tier is because, again, it's not like a KO where you just land one punch. You really have to systematically shut someone down on the ground. And that cannot be fluked. All right. Now, you may say, well, Whittaker's jaw, that can be fluked. Well, not really. Khamzat Chimaev, he put Whittaker in that horrible position. He was cranking on Whittaker's face throughout the round. For him to take down Robert Whittaker, a guy that's talked about as having some of the best takedown defense ever in UFC history, for him to take him down that easily and then to submit him in the first fucking round, nobody else does this. I mean, you could think of the highest level grappling performances ever. What are you going to think? Jones versus Gone? Okay, it's Gone. It's not Robert Whittaker. All right? Think about Khabib dominating Dustin Poirier. Took him until the third round. Wasn't this easy. Wasn't this fast. Not saying it's not impressive. I'm just saying that's impressive. What is this? Right? Khabib, Justin Gaethje. It's like he submitted Gaethje fast, but it's Gaethje. It's not Whittaker. This was amazing. This is the thing. We don't see grapplers finishing the elite other grapplers in the UFC in one round who also have amazing takedown defense. So yeah, this is an S tier performance. Perfect. Couldn't get any better. And although you could say this is kind of what people expect Khamzat to do, man, I didn't expect him to do this to Whittaker. Maybe I could see it because that's kind of how he wins. I understand that, but Khamzat's one of those guys where the expected way for him to win is like a freakishly impressive way to win every single time it happens. Okay? So even though it's expected, it's always impressive. Let's get on to the next one. Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje. This is S tier. You knocked out Justin Gaethje, got all the style points with that, but not only did he KO Gaethje, he also hurt him badly in the beginning of that round when they were still just having a regular fight. So it's one thing to knock out Gaethje when they're both, slugging like fools, and you got Gaethje in his Rufus mode. It's another thing to rock Gaethje in the beginning of the round when Gaethje's still actually trying to win. Okay? It's another thing to not only rock him in the fifth round and then finish him, but to outclass him for 4 rounds and to hardly get hit. And to make Justin Gaethje look like a simple striker. You know what I mean? Listen, Dustin Poirier fights Justin Gaethje, he goes to war. Rafael Fiziev fights him, he goes to war. Chandler fights him, he goes to war. Everyone that fights Justin Gaethje goes to war, except for Max Holloway. Max Holloway made a Justin Gaethje striking fight look clean, surgical, and easy until the 5th round where he knocked him out brutally. So this is S tier. In my opinion, this is the best performance of the year next to Khamzat. Okay? The Dricus one is weird, though, because, again, it's that was a very competitive fight, right? I don't know, man. I might have to say B tier. Good performance. Every single B tier performance is good. I'll say B tier. I'm just waiting to get another one that could be A tier. Pantoja. I'll say Pantoja B tier. I expected Pantoja to win. A lot of people expected him to win. By the way, this is the Asakura fight. I can't just say Pantoja because he had a couple fights this year, but I think he actually surpassed our expectations. I expected Pantoja to hold down Asakura, to out-grapple him, maybe 50-45 him, 49-46 him, have a bit of a scrap. It's like outside of a couple of big moments from Asakura, and I'm talking about a couple big strikes landed, he got outlanded in the first by Pantoja. Pantoja landed 20-plus significant strikes, a lot of good body kicks, even dropped him. Asakura, that is, dropped him. And then submits him in the second round. So he outstrikes him, he drops him in and submits him. Expected for him to win, but that dominantly, that entertainingly, like shutting him down that easily, I say that's definitely B tier. A tier, I mean, listen, A tier would be if he did this against someone that had proven themselves in the UFC a little bit. You know what I mean? But it's Kai Asakura, right? I want to put this A tier, but you have to take into account it's a guy making his UFC debut, octagon jitters. Yeah, I understand he's good and risen, but it's risen, all right? And he's not even like a dominant champion. But how could it have gotten any better, right? I guess if he didn't get hit with the flying knee, right? But, you know, we got to be very critical of the way we're judging these. Let's get on to the next one. This is going to be an interesting one. Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. You know what? I'll put this A tier. And the reason why is because of the wrestling of Charles Oliveira. He got rocked in the 5th round, okay? I don't care about the back. I mean, listen, the back of the head shots were bad, but the back of the head shots wasn't what led to Oliveira being rocked initially. He got rocked because Michael Chandler put it on him, all right? Chandler actually decided to fight like Chandler, and he ended up winning that final round. But Oliveira still dominated him for 4, outstruck him easily, hardly got hit, out-grappled him easily, took his back multiple times, beat him up on the ground a little bit. But the reason why I think this is A tier is because of how easily Oliveira took him down. Chandler's got this mystique of a brick wall takedown defense guy, like a Calvin Kattar or a Cody Garbrandt. Even though Cody Garbrandt, there's no reason to think that guy would have brick wall takedown defense, but people just always did. Chandler's one of those guys. You just look at him, you're like, yeah, this guy's got great takedown defense. Partially because he's a wrestler, but Oliveira was literally toppling this guy over like it was nothing. So I think that's really impressive. Was he expected to beat Chandler? Yes. Was he expected to finish him? Yes. Did he finish him? No. So that kind of, in a way, I think people were overhyping the performance just a little bit. Like Oliveira looked like you would expect Oliveira to look. The one thing that was good is that he had a more surgical performance than the first time. The first time he got hurt badly in the first round, but he still got hurt in the 5th. We're going to act like the 5th round doesn't exist. Why? Because Charles won the first 4, so the last one doesn't count because Charles already knew he won. It's like, we can't be saying that, right? But I guess, you know, it's a bit scrappy the first time, less scrappy the second time until the 5th. I guess we don't count the 5th round. You don't count the 5th because, you know, Oliveira fans, you know, well, Oliveira already knew you had it in the bag. You didn't care about that round. Yeah, well, it still happened. I don't know. I kind of want to put this B tier because, you know, we expected him to. Michael Chandler's been out of the cage for years. People are going to be fucking angry. But you know what? A tier can't finish an old man Mike, right? He can't finish Chandler. And getting rocked up in the 5th. But the wrestling was pretty good, though. The wrestling was pretty good. I'd say this is a masterclass from Oliveira. It's difficult. You know what? It's difficult to make a Michael Chandler fight look clean, but Chandler wasn't really fighting like Chandler, though. Right? It's like Stipe. Chandler wasn't really fighting like Chandler, though. He was patient Chandler. He was patient Mike. And he shouldn't be fighting like that. So, you know, it's a tricky one. Jan Figueroa, you know, no. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to put. I can't have Oliveira in the same tier as Jan Figgy. This is old man Michael Chandler taking a round off of Oliveira, not even fighting like Chandler. That's a good performance. It's a great performance, but it's not as good as Jan versus Figueiredo. And I think that Jan versus Figueiredo is actually slightly worse than Max versus Gaethje. Entertaining wise, this is S tier. But Jan beating a crafty vet prime Davidson Figueiredo, former champion, 3-fight win streak. I'm sorry, not having a horrible moment where he loses a round, right? Arguably 50-45 Davison. Dude, that's A tier. Yeah, maybe I'll put Oliveira A tier, but it's Davison Figueiredo. I expected this to be more competitive. I expected Chandler, and I expected Oliveira to finish Chandler and actually get him out of there sooner. So you know what? I think Jan's performance is A tier because this one exceeded my expectations and exceeded most people's expectations. This was an amazing performance. Jan versus Figueiredo, unbelievable performance. Not only did Petr Yan show us basically every single technique in his striking arsenal, who, he's the most technical striker in the entire sport, in my opinion. Best technique out of anyone. But he also outstruck crafty vet lighter man skill, tough, heavy hitting Figueiredo, soundly, out-grappled him, got taken down in the first round, then reversed the position. This was unbelievable. I think this was a better performance than anyone. This is a better performance than anyone in the B tier. Could it have been better? Yeah, if he didn't get dropped by Figgy, didn't arguably lose the round in which he got dropped in, then it would be S tier. But right now I'm going to say it's A tier. All right. But we expected him to beat Figueiredo, so it can't be S tier, right? Can't be S tier because we expected him to beat Figueiredo and he got dropped. If he didn't get dropped and we expected it to be, more competitive, then it'd be S tier. But let's get on to the next one. Topuria versus Volk. This is an interesting one. Guys, how do we rate these KOs? Because it was competitive before the KO. And I understand, well, he checkmated him and he got him with such a clean, accurate shot that Volk never had another chance. So, I can't just put this S tier. I'm sorry. Max Holloway made Gaethje look simple, made him look easy, had a clean performance. Volkanovski was out here piecing him up with the jab, right? Volkanovski was out here floating around, stinging like a butterfly. Okay? He was out here throwing lead head kicks on the guard, piecing him up with the jab, letting him know, talking to him. Volk's performance is S tier, baby. No. We can't. This is from Ilia Topuria's perspective. If you were judging second round Volk in this fight before the KO is the GOAT. But guys, I think the Volk that showed up looked really good. I'll say the Volk that showed up looked really good. If this was like an old man Volk, stiff, slow, different guy, I'd be like, all right, maybe B tier. Maybe even expected. The reason why it's not S tier is because it was expected. I'm sorry, man. I know a lot of people thought Volk was going to win this, but you were in Peaches and Creamville. Volk was never going to be Ilia Topuria. He was coming off of a brutal KO loss. Even if Topuria was worse than he actually is, he still probably would have KO'd Volk, all right, because of the power alone. Because of the power alone, he would have knocked him out. But it was the skill that allowed him to do it early on in the fight in the second round. Listen, Volk was fast. He looked amazing in this fight. Go rewatch the fight. It's actually really entertaining. Volk looked great, looked on point. Some people were saying, oh, he's not fighting like himself. He's not fighting like himself. How is he supposed to fight Ilia Topuria? Like Marc-Andre Barriou, he's supposed to go and butt heads with him in the center of the octagon? What's he supposed to do? Like slug with him like Max Holloway did with Justin Gaethje? Hell no. He's got to be the elusive guy on the outside. It's just Topuria took advantage of a hole in his defense, which is him pulling his head back and leaving his chin on the center line. That's how Volk usually evades those punches of Brian Ortega, but he's usually not in front of a boxer like Ilia. So I'll say it's A tier. Listen, Topuria, similar to Dricus, kind of has a style where he's always going to leave himself out there to get hit, but that's also because of how aggressive he is. He's always trying to knock his opponents out. He is going to get hit, and also it's like, all right, you have a little bit more room to get hit when you're fighting Volk or Max, right? Like these guys, not only are you trying to KO them, so you're already always moving forward and putting yourself out there to get hit, but they're also like the best volume strikers in UFC history. So you're going to get hit. So him getting outstruck a little bit by Volk first round, it's like, all right, but how many people actually make it that competitive with Volk? Right? Like he still made it very competitive and then knocked him out. I'll say this is A tier. This was not a case of him only KOing Volk because Volk's chin was gone. The punch he landed on Volkanovski, if it wasn't proven by what happened in the Holloway fight, This guy's punch was enough to knock out Max Holloway. That punch is always going to knock out Volk. Whether or not the Makhachev fight happened, where he got head kicked, that was irrelevant to him getting knocked out here. All right, but let's get on to the next one. Max Holloway, Topuria. I'll say this is A tier as well. Nah, man, maybe S tier though. It's weird because I'm so used to thinking the best performances are always the clean, surgical ones, right? On one hand, this was a better performance than the Dricus Adesanya fight because Adesanya still looked really, really good in that fight. Did Max look really, really good? He looked okay, but Topuria made him look okay. He kind of made him look right? He took a round off of Holloway, took the second round off of him. I think Holloway may have won the first. Second round, I thought Topuria won. That's already impressive. But I think it's also unfair to knock Ilia Topuria's performances just because he has a style where he's getting hit and because he's knocking his opponents out. Like, for example, if Topuria had won a decision against Holloway and it was still a little bit of a scrappy fight, I could see myself rating it high because I'd be like, well, no one's ever going to KO Max and you're going to have to take damage, right? But then again, there's fights like Volk versus Max where Volk doesn't take that much damage in the third fight. But, you know, he knocked out Holloway. I'm going to say this is S tier. You know, if he KO'd him with one big punch in the first round, I probably wouldn't even have it on the list. But we saw him, you know, this is a weird one. But how could I say, you know what? I'll say it's S tier, and this is why. We expected him to KO Volk. Not everyone, but people that knew what was up. You know, we expected him to knock out Volk. But did we expect him to, you know, knock out a Volk that looks like prime Volk? Not necessarily. But this one, did we expect him to go out there and knock out Max? Not really. I don't think a lot of us expected that. We knew it was possible, but this was, you know, a fear of ours that we never really thought was going to really happen. And it happened. So you got to give him credit. First person to ever knock out Holloway. I think that's S tier level. Okay. That's pretty amazing. Next up, we have Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill. You know, it's kind of expected. I don't think that was that impressive. Aljo versus Mavzar. Aljo versus Mavzar is going to be S tier. Now, this was a great one. Nah, I'm joking. We're going to have to talk about Pereira versus Jamal Hill. All right. It's a KO, right? Listen, we're not going to have a lot of early KOs on this list. I don't think I have a single Aspinall fight in here. So it's one of those ones, right? Maybe I'll do a KO of the year award list. I expected him to knock out Jamal Hill pretty easily, though. Okay? I expected this to happen. You know, I honestly don't even want to rank it because it's not even like a real performance. It's just one big punch. You know what's a great performance from him, though? I'll say A tier against Jiri. That's Pereira head kicking Jiri. I honestly, I don't want to do early KOs just because, you know, what are we really going off? I know technically performance, but it's not all about how big of a performance was it from a showman's perspective. It's like, you know, we're going to have to get into the nitty-gritty details here. I think that I'm going to use his performance against Jiri because we actually saw a full round. Okay? That's like, for Alex Pereira, that's basically like a 5-rounder. But listen, he schooled Jiri Prochazka and dropped him in the first round, outstruck him pretty easily, hardly got hit. This is what was really impressive to me. I expected him to beat Jiri. I picked Jiri to beat him the first time because I thought that Jiri would be able to hit him consistently, and Pereira at the time, it's still only been one fight removed from the Adesanya fight. We still didn't really know how his chin was going to hold up at light heavyweight. He's also a little bit older, right? But after the first Jiri fight, I picked Pereira to win, but I still expected Jiri to be able to hit him. Pereira's defense improved from the first fight. He was much less hittable when he fought Jiri Prochazka. Jiri had zero success. Pereira lit him up on the feet first round, dropped him, and then dropped him again in the second with a head kick. I mean, like, this, it couldn't get any better. The only reason why it's not S tier is because we expected him to beat Jiri. S tier is when there's something that's unexpected that's happening, right? Like, I thought Whittaker could beat Khamzat Chimaev. Okay? I thought he could beat him. But this one, again, we kind of expected it would happen. But a very clean performance. Like, it was basically a perfect performance. Just not S tier because it's a Jiri Prochazka fight. Another one, Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill. I'm going to say this is B tier. Was it expected for him to go out here and have a competitive fight with Khalil Roundtree in the early going? No. We thought he was probably going to knock him out early and have a Jiri Prochazka-esque, Jamal Hill-esque style of performance. He actually had a war and he lost one of the first 2 rounds, right? But can I say it was... So I can't say it's expected, but can I say it's also not great and it didn't live up? I can't say that because, listen, Pereira still schooled him in the 3rd round and the 4th round, went Super Saiyan mode, Ultra Instinct, right? Dipping and dodging out of the way a lot of those Khalil Roundtree shots. And honestly, it looked like Pereira had achieved a new level of striking in the heavier weight classes. We really saw his full striking arsenal. He looked amazing in those rounds, so it was a good comeback. In that sense, I can't say it didn't live up because it's not like, oh, Khalil Roundtree kicked his ass for 2 rounds and then made it really competitive, but Pereira just barely got by. Like, Pereira still brought it back, got the momentum back, and then dominated the last 2 rounds. So for that reason, I'll say B tier. I can't say A tier again. I know, well, Pereira winning has to be A tier. It's like we're judging it based on how clean the performance was. Wasn't the cleanest performance. But you may say, well, what about Whittaker and Costa? That wasn't because we expected Robert Whittaker to fucking go out there and dominate Paulo Costa. And there was not a single round that was totally dominant. And he didn't finish him. So, we only had 3 rounds. Whittaker wasn't about to finish him in round 4. Come on. All right. Pantoja versus Usyk. I'm going to say this for Pantoja, though. This was not great. Didn't live up to the expectations. I thought that Pantoja had maybe done enough to win, but I honestly think that Usyk probably could have won this fight. Pantoja had a lot of ugly moments, had moments where he was, it was an entertaining fight. It was an entertaining fight, but I expected him to 49-46, 50-45 Usyk, maybe even finish him, and he arguably lost. So this one, he did not live up to the expectations. Let's see. Oliveira, Arman Tsarukyan. From Arman's perspective, some people still think Oliveira won this fight, which is just pure delusion. And another thing that's crazy is people think that Oliveira outstruck Arman and all Arman did to win this fight was hold him down. First off, Arman elbowed the shit out of Oliveira on the ground and cut him open in the 2nd round. Like, had a brutal barrage of elbows. So beating up Oliveira on the ground, not only holding him down, but beating him up is insanely impressive. He didn't just hold him down. And Oliveira did absolutely fuck all on the feet in this fight. It was the most frustrating thing ever. And I'm an Oliveira fan, and I'm just going to be real. I don't understand why a lot of Oliveira fans are completely delusional. Like, you can be a fan and be real. He didn't do anything on the feet. He was frozen, doing nothing, and allowed Arman to push him back and jab him up. Can I say it's A tier for Arman? I'm not going to say it's A tier, but like, he beat up Oliveira on the ground and then outstruck him pretty handily. So I'm going to say it was a B tier performance, sort of like Umar and Sandhagen. It's a good performance. Maybe not A tier, but listen, he clearly won this fight. I don't know why there's any debate. It's insane to me that people still think that Oliveira won this fight. It just goes to show how much people love Charles Oliveira, but again, they're biased with the way that they view this one. I was rooting for Oliveira. I picked him to win this fight, and it was frustrating to see him not let his hands go and let pillow hands Arman walk him down and jab him up. But that's what happened, and you got to give Arman the respect for doing that. It was a good performance from Arman. He outstruck Oliveira and outgrappled him in the 2nd. Yes, Oliveira had a couple submission attempts. I understand that, but a couple submission attempts, that doesn't necessarily win you the fight. It's like people act like he had a 3-minute submission attempt in the 3rd round. It was like a 40-second submission attempt. Arman had outstruck him and controlled him in that round previously to that happening. So, listen, it was competitive. So, if it was dominant, it would be A tier, if not S tier. I think it was a great performance from Arman. Similar to Umar and Sandhagen. Burns versus Brady. I'm going to say B tier. Expected for Burns to lose, I would say yeah, so that's why I can't put it that high, even though this was like a 50-45. But the reason why I can't put it higher than B tier is because Burns was kind of old, coming off of a knockout loss. Clearly wasn't the same Gilbert Burns that fought Khamzat, right? But still, great performance for Sean Brady. To see him go out there and, listen, whether or not Gilbert Burns got KO'd in the fight before this, he still was outstriking JDM on the feet in moments, which is very impressive. And for Brady to go out there and outstrike Gilbert Burns, that's pretty good. So I'm going to say this is B tier. But again, we got to take it with context. It's not the same Burns that showed up to fight Khamzat. Hermansson. Was it expected for Hermansson to beat Joe Pyfer? No. So right off the bat, it's B tier. Was it expected for Jack Hermansson to beat Joe Pyfer if he was going to beat him via boxing? Fuck no. That's A tier. That's an amazing performance. One of the most underrated performances of the year. Jack Hermansson beat Joe Pyfer on the feet. Pillow hands Hermansson. The guy with the least amount of power in middleweight outstruck and outboxed the guy with the most power after he was down 2 rounds to none. Without even needing to use his grappling, he shot like a couple of takedowns, got them stuffed. He landed one takedown in like the 5th round just to put a stamp on it, but this was an amazing performance. Unexpected, upset, the way he pulled it off without his, crafty Manson grappling. So I thought this was an amazing one. This is a great one. Evloev versus Aljo. I'm sorry, man. This is not a great performance from Movsar Evloev. I know that the way that people cope about this is like, it's similar to the Garry and Shavkat one. This just proves that both of these guys are the best in the division. This just proves, man, Garry and Shavkat are the 2 GOATs. It's like, listen, I understand being impressed with Garry. I understand being impressed with Aljo. For Aljo to take down Evloev, and Aljo couldn't even take down O'Malley, like, that's impressive. Aljo did really well against a guy that I thought was going to be able to beat him a little more handily. But, Evloev was expected to do better than he did. He was not expected to go out there and have a damn near draw with Aljamain Sterling. He was expected to be too much for him in the grappling a little bit. Or maybe not if you were a super hardcore fan, but maybe just go out there and not be taken down that easily by Aljo and be able to outstrike him. Okay? Like, he won this fight because Aljo made a couple big mistakes. Listen, he's still really good. Evloev's really good, but I think, a lot of us expected this to be a little bit more dominant. And he was playing catch-up for most of the fight. So I don't think this was a performance that lived up. But it was definitely better than this one. Bo Nickel and Paul Craig. Now, from Paul Craig's perspective, this is damn near S tier. He went out there and threw body kicks and nothing else. From a perspective of a company that's trying to sell a boxing bag that's capable of throwing a kick to give you, to check your defense every once in a while, this is an S tier performance. They're a heavy bag that was able to throw a kick every once in a while, actually lived up and is now being sold in stores. But for the guy that actually was fighting that thing, for him to make it competitive and to give it so much respect where he won't even close the distance to try to get a takedown, okay? Or let it, he rocks him once. He rocked Paul Craig in the 3rd round. For him to be like, I got to back off. It's going to throw another body kick. And I want to get KO'd. I don't want to get knocked out into orbit via a body kick right now from this guy that has not thrown a single punch in the whole fight. It's just, I'm sorry. This may be the worst performance of the year. I was like, listen, dude. This expected was going to be if Bo Nickel went out there and knocked out Paul Craig. Okay? All right, B tier would have been if he went out there and freaking beat him up and then KO'd him. A tier would be if he went out there and suplexed him. All right, no. B tier would be, B tier would actually be if he didn't KO Paul Craig, if he went out there, took Paul Craig down and out-grappled him and beat him up a little bit on the ground. A tier would be if he just totally annihilated Paul Craig, was suplexing him, tossed him around the octagon, 10-8ing him on the ground. There's no way he could have an S tier performance against a guy he's expected to beat. But listen, not a single. This would have been if he took him down once, but couldn't really do a whole lot with it. Right? Couldn't really do a whole lot with it. If Paul Craig's still crafty, but not even trying, and not going for it after you rock him in the 3rd. I think this is the worst part. It was close, and Paul Craig did nothing. That right there is basically all you need to know. Paul Craig did nothing, And it was still a razor close fight despite, Bo was doing stuff, but still somehow it was close. I don't get how that's possible, but it was. I don't think this is the best performance, but I think he'll have much better performances in the future. Belal Muhammad is going to be A tier, man. It's going to be A tier. Now, did Leon win a single round? Leon took Belal's back in one round. I think this was a 49-46. Now, it wasn't like, again, a really clean performance, right? It wasn't necessarily a clean performance. Belal was still getting hit every now and then, but it's Leon. It's like if you're going to close the distance on a good striker like that, you're going to get hit every once in a while. But the reason why this is A tier right off the bat, not just B tier, is because he outstruck Leon Edwards on the feet and outboxed him. And Leon is not known for his boxing, but still to outstrike Leon, who's talked about as one of the best strikers, and to outstrike him when he's just defended his belt 2 times. He would just beat Kamaru Usman, just beat Colby Covington, similar stylistic matchups. He's A tier. But I kind of want to put him S tier just because nobody expected him to win. And for people that expected him to win, they were saying, yeah, Belal's going to hold him down and control him, not beat him up. Or Belal's going to be able to kick him on the outside and all. Like, he beat him up and walked him down and put volume on him and took him down and controlled him and slammed him on his bald spot. Style points. The only thing holding him back from S tier is the fact that he got his back taken for a full round and maybe dropped a round and a half or whatever. But I think this is A tier. Belal Muhammad, unexpected, underdog, and making it entertaining, taking the fight to Edwards, making it a dog fight. That's exactly how you're supposed to approach a Leon Edwards fight. I think this is an A tier performance. Okay, on to the next one. O'Malley versus Chito Vera. I'll say it's A tier, all right? S tier would be if Chito Vera was as good as Petr Yan, but he's not, right? So it was expected for O'Malley to go out there and beat Chito. Maybe S tier would have been if he KO'd Chito because of how much damage he was doing. 5th round, Chito's just done. He gets KO'd, right? But I think this was as good as it could have possibly gotten for O'Malley. Like, Chito literally did nothing in this fight other than get beat up. And it wasn't that he did nothing because he didn't move. He was like a boxing heavy bag. I mean, O'Malley made him look like that. Chito was still Chito, but O'Malley was just 10 times better than him. At some point, he was just making up things. He was making up techniques on Chito Vera, making up combinations that we've never seen before. So this is one of the best striking master classes I've ever seen. I know Marlon Vera is not necessarily known as the best contender, right? A lot of people thought he didn't deserve that fight, but he was on a win streak, and people usually have closer fights with him, Like, everyone else has had a more competitive fight with him on the feet. O'Malley made him look silly. So this is A tier. Only thing stopping it from being S tier is the fact that, we expected him to win. Moreno and Albazi. I'll say that is going to be A tier too. Listen, I think this is an amazing performance. All right. Expected for him to beat Albazi? Yes, it absolutely was. But was it expected for him to set a strike record for flyweight against Albazi and to look amazing despite the fact that he looked kind of washed in the fight with, Royval before? We thought that maybe Moreno's kind of done. Maybe we've seen the best of him and, right, he's just showing up for a paycheck this time. He's not going to be as motivated, but he looked motivated. He set a significant strike record on Albazi. And also Albazi is a guy that you could expect to go out there and try to take down Moreno. Had no success with that. So he really just got schooled for 5 rounds. I think this was an amazing performance. Next up, Fluffy Hernandez. I'm going to say him beating Michel Pereira is B tier. Not A tier because Pereira kind of gassed earlier than we expected. And you kind of just know that when someone can't finish Fluffy, that he's going to go out there and dominate them and beat them. But I'm going to put this B tier because people still looked at Michel Pereira as a boogeyman in this division. Lighter man skill. Ever since he moved up from welterweight, he's finishing everybody in like the first minute. So it was still a tough opponent for him to go out there and beat. He not only dominated him, but completely annihilated him and TKO'd him. So that was an amazing performance. Okay. Next up, we have Royval and Moreno. I'm going to say this is B tier. If this was a little bit more dominant, I'd put it at A tier. It was somewhat competitive, but Moreno just didn't really look himself, so for that reason, I can't say that this was like the best Brandon Moreno that we've seen. Really looked like he wanted it. It really looked like he didn't want to be in there that night. But Royval still beat Brandon Moreno, and that was an upset. So I'm going to have to say that's a B-tier performance. Lots of B-tier performances, guys. Yan versus Song. B-tier or expected, to be honest. I'm going to say this is expected. B-tier would be if he put a little bit more of a stamp on it. But, Yan lost the first round. There was a lot of pressure on him going into this fight. I know he got injured early on, but still losing the first round to Song. Very, very close fight. Just winning with the takedowns at the end of that third and the second. Yeah, maybe he outstruck him a little bit, but I'd say this is an expected performance out of Petr Yan. Next up, we got Muhammad Makhachev versus Alex Perez. I'm going to say that's in one of the worst performances of the year. All right, smudge performance, just extremely boring. That was a terrible performance. Next up, we have Merab Dvalishvili versus Henry Cejudo. I'm going to say this is a A-tier performance. Okay? Maybe B-tier. I think A-tier would be if Merab dominated Cejudo in the first round, but he got rocked and he got held down a little bit. But still, to go out there and to pick up a former gold medal Olympic wrestling champion like a sack of potatoes and throw him on the ground is unbelievable. And to dominate him in the second round as well is unbelievable. So, yeah, for that reason, man, I might say this is A tier. This is one of the craziest performances I've seen. Not as impressive as the Yan one, right? Because Cejudo's still a little bit old, but I think that was pretty special to watch Merab do that and sort of break a Olympic champion and to out-wrestle him that easily in MMA. Garry versus MVP. I thought this was a really bad performance. All right. Now, listen, I understand it. It's really difficult to look good against MVP on the feet. I get that. Okay. I still expected Garry to at least have some ability on the feet, to at least do something on the feet. Did nothing on the feet, got easily outstruck. Didn't really do anything on the ground either. Just kind of held him on the ground, held his back, tried to choke him out, couldn't get it. I expected Garry to go out there, be competitive on the feet, right? That would have been expected, and out-grapple him, which could have been like B tier. Man, I think like this was the worst way he could have won. But, Garry versus Jeff Neal, I'll say expected. I didn't think this was going to be a war if Garry won. I think he looked decent. Honestly, a lot of people critiqued him for this one, but he was still closing the distance on Jeff Neal and outstriking him in close quarters with knees and elbows. Pretty impressive. And it was Jeff Neal that was clinching him up against the fence, kind of making the fight boring at times, right? So this one I would say is expected. What else do we have? We have Royval versus Tatsuro Taira. I'll say that's B tier. That was actually a pretty good performance from Royval. Lost a couple rounds, but still almost finished Tatsuro Taira. Had a crafty performance against him and hurt him at times. Taira had a lot of hype going into that one. Lerone Murphy and Edson Barboza. I'm going to say that's B tier. Okay? Edson's a little bit older. Okay? But to be honest, to go out there and to beat a crafty veteran on the feet, especially when you're a UK guy, you're a UK prospect, and UK prospects are not known for being gritty and having wars, right? They're known for having like very nice, clean performances where they're going for a takedown every now and then. A couple of jabs here and there, but Lerone Murphy walked Edson Barboza down, who Barboza, by the way, was coming off of the craftiest performance I've ever seen, all right, against Sadiq Youssef. And Lerone Murphy just took the fight to him, outstruck him, and bit down on the mouthpiece, had a Guerrero performance. But what else do we have? Aljo versus Kattar. I'll say that's Calvin Kattar didn't look great in that fight. I'll say it's a B tier performance. It was a good performance from Aljo. He ragdolled Calvin Kattar, but listen, Kattar just didn't even do anything. Like, I know Aljo made him look like that, but Kattar just showed up having nothing. He wasn't doing anything on the feet, wasn't even throwing any strikes. But still a good performance from Aljo to walk all over Calvin Kattar like that. But, you know, we could have seen a couple of ground and pound strikes. If Aljo beat Kattar up badly, then I would say this is A tier. For him to go out there after a tough loss, move up a weight class when most people were picking Kattar, and to beat Calvin Kattar dominantly and beat him up, I'd say that's A tier, but it didn't really do a lot of damage to him. So I'll say that's a B tier performance. Very good performance. Shamil Gaziev versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Jairzinho Rozenstruik made Shamil Gaziev quit on the feet, which is very impressive because Shamil Gaziev is the marauder with good cardio. We saw that against Martin Buday. And for him not only to nullify the grappling, because Shamil took him down early, it looked early on like Shamil was going to be able to do a whole lot. For him to nullify the grappling and outstrike him, right? And make him quit. I'm going to say that's S tier, man. That's as good as it can possibly get. That's what I'll say. As good as it can possibly get. No, but we're probably going to put that B tier because Shamil Gaziev's, you know, we'll see how he does in the future. He's not the best right now, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video. That is it. Let me know what you guys think. That is my ranking system for the UFC performances. Maybe we'll do a KOs tier list. I'll do a KO tier list so we can talk about some big KOs, but hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time.